I just want to register my continued objection to the removal of the Lego clamps. I feel like the Lego clamps were very important, and the Ice Warriors are severely impoverished as a result of their removal. But
yeah, well, it could be that Skaldak gets on board the flying saucer, and they immediately look at his gloves and are like, "Oh my god, those are so 5,000 years ago," and they just like, "We have to get rid of these," and they just take them right off, give him Lego clamps, and he's good to go slaughter, and he's happy as a murderous clam.
I'm Tom Dickinson.
And I'm Louis Midas.
And this is The Cloister Room,
a podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
Cold War.
Cold War.
It's just Cold War. There's no the, is there?
No, there's no the. And it occurred to me on maybe my second or third watch through that Cold War is like totally a pun on the fact that it's Ice Warriors.
Yeah. Yep. Or an Ice Warrior.
And Ice Warrior. Yeah. Well, there's more at the end.
We don't see them in person.
No.
But anyhow, how did you feel about Cold War?
I liked it for the most part.
Yeah, I think I would call it a solid episode. Not like one of my favorites.
Right.
But it was pretty good.
There wasn't a whole lot I disliked. I mean, if we want to compare this to Gatiss' other episodes, it was certainly better than, Victory of the Daleks and such things, which was also a sort of history-type war story thingy.
Well, he tends to do... Gatiss has tended to be called upon to do a lot of historicals.
Right.
He did The Unquiet Dead. He did The Idiot's Lantern.
Oh, yeah.
He did... basically, Night Terrors is the only episode he's contributed that hasn't been historical.
Right. Huh. Yeah, I guess I'd never really thought about that, but yeah. So he was at it again, and he did a pretty good job of it. But I guess once again, I was kind of thinking that this episode seemed a little... It just kind of felt... And I didn't really have a problem with this, so I wouldn't say that I disliked this, but it was just... It felt like something we'd seen before.
I think it feels specifically like a couple different things we've seen before.
Right.
Like, I think it felt to me like Dalek.
Yeah.
I didn't like it as much as I like Dalek.
Right.
But it does... Well, the thing is, it's very much... And I think this is entirely deliberate. It's a base under siege story, which is, the story where the Doctor and his companions show up to a secluded location that is staffed with various personnel who have just about reached a moment of crisis, and then all of a sudden, an alien invader attacks them, and the Doctor has to win over their trust to repel the threat.
Right.
And the thing about that, the reason I say this is very deliberate is because there are a lot of Doctor Who stories like that, but in season 5 of the classic series, which is the season that introduced the Ice Warriors, every story in that season fits that exact description, with the exception of, I think, one.
That's really funny.
Season 5 is sometimes called the Monster Season because it's just base under siege after base under siege after base under siege with monsters. You got a base under siege with the Cybermen. You got a base under siege with the Ice Warriors. You got 2 bases under siege with the Yetis and the Great Intelligence. So it's interesting that we've got the Great Intelligence and the Ice Warriors and the Cybermen in that season, all of whom are appearing in this season as well.
That's interesting. That's that's kind of cool that they would intentionally draw upon that sort of trope almost, and that's kind of a neat sort of reference.
It is, but on the other hand, it also kind of... this episode in particular very much made me wonder whether Doctor Who is trying too hard to appease classic series fans in ways that don't necessarily make sense to new series fans. And I know you're not as well versed in the classic series as I am.
Right.
So things like The Great Intelligence and The Ice Warriors and stuff like that doesn't necessarily have the same immediate appeal to you,
right,
as it would to, say, me.
Right.
And I think that might be... I don't know if I'd even necessarily call it a problem, but I think it's sort of dividing people's experience of what it is they're seeing. Because there's a lot in this story that's just, hearkening back.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, yeah.
Even the hostile action displacement system, the HADS, which causes the TARDIS to disappear, is something that was last seen in, I think it was The Crotons, which is another Patrick Troughton story. So... There's all these little things that are happening this year in particular, much more than I think in any previous new series season, that are, pointing back and kind of relying on nostalgia for something that probably a majority of the audience either hasn't seen or hasn't seen in decades.
I wonder if the show will continue along that vector where it's gonna eventually coincide with like every single thing is gonna be something out of classic Doctor Who. I mean, it's also kind of interesting that this is happening right at the 50th anniversary, or right as we're approaching the 50th anniversary. Which I don't know. That's I don't have any theories on why that might be happening, but especially since like there's no evidence that any classic Doctors will be in it, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's probably just an extended, nostalgia fest because of the anniversary.
Right.
I wonder whether it's just going to end up that like Clara is Susan or something like that. I think that's a theory out there somewhere.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know. I still enjoyed it, but I was conscious of the fact that there's probably a very large class of viewers for whom this is nowhere near as interesting as it is for me.
Right. I wonder if it's almost trying to like shake new viewers and like test their mettle and like make sure
to get rid of them. And,
well, yeah.
Well, this is essentially what the show did in the 80s. And with, Attack of the Cybermen, a story which largely exists to like reconcile a couple of discrepancies that are in two different 1960s Cybermen stories. I don't know, and that. I think that is. I hope not. I hope they're not doing that deliberately.
Right. It certainly does not seem like something that would be marketable. Come watch this show that's trying to alienate you. I don't know though, because it's interesting to think about that. I mean, the show ended up going off the air in the late 80s. And I wonder if that would happen again. I mean, I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but I wonder if that's going to happen again, and possibly soon, if because of this. Like, I mean, I don't know. I certainly don't want it to.
I think the show in the 80s had some deeper problems than simply that, both in terms of like problems with the show itself and problems with the way the relationship between the producers and the BBC was going. I don't think that's necessarily true right now, but at least I'd like to hope not. I don't know. One thing I've actually taken to doing after each episode of Doctor Who, I go on Twitter and I use Twitter search, and I search Doctor Who terrible, Doctor Who awful, Doctor Who wonderful, Doctor Who beautiful. And I just do Doctor Who in various adjectives, just because I'm curious to see what kind of opinions are out there.
That's amazing.
And which ones are most prevalent. I'm just kind of curious.
Have you been like logging these?
No, I haven't.
Because I would love to see that.
Well, you can do it yourself.
No, I'm going to, and I don't have it anymore, but at one point I had a program that actually let you save Twitter searches into like an XML file.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I'm going to have to try and find it again so I can do that. Because it would just be so interesting to just like chart those things.
Oh yeah, I should be doing something a little bit more systematic. Because anecdotally, I feel like I'm seeing I'm not overwhelmingly seeing one thing over another. Like I am seeing quite a bit of Doctor Who is horrible this season, or that episode of Doctor Who was just awful. I'm seeing a lot of that. But I'm also seeing people say how wonderful it was. Like, for instance, the reception after Rings of AK-47, Rings of Rings of whatever, Rings of Akaten.
Right.
The reception after Rings of Akaten. I mean, I saw so much like absolute vitriolic hatred in Twitter, but also like unbridled joy. People saying like that was the most emotionally affecting thing I've ever seen on television. Things like that on Twitter. So it's just become really fascinating to me to just sit there and see what people are saying about it just in like these 140 character snapshots.
That's really interesting. Do you ever search for any keywords that are like in between like okay or meh?
No, I haven't. Maybe I should.
Yeah, I want to. Well, because it would be interesting. It would be interesting if like in the past. I mean, obviously we don't have this data, so we can't know. But it would be interesting in the past if in the previous seasons there was like maybe like 60% of the voices out there were meh on Doctor Who, and there was like 40% that like was divided between loving and hating, and then if that middle ground is shrinking, I wonder if that's happening at all.
I don't think Twitter. It would be really cool if Twitter would let you like delve into historical stuff. I don't think they do.
No, I don't think so.
I assume that is something that would be technologically possible, but also resource intensive in ways they don't want to deal with.
Right. It almost seems like something that you'd be able to pay for as a service. Like if you were a major corporation who wanted to see trends of how your product was being discussed over a long period of time, you could like contact Twitter and ask for that. But it would probably cost something. And in fact, that would be a good way for Twitter to make money. I don't know how Twitter does make money, but I think that they should do it that way.
Well, we should get them on the phone.
We should.
But in the meantime, I found that I think the people who didn't like Cold War seem to have negative things to say about the Ice Warrior design.
Okay.
Either with or without the armor.
Huh.
Whereas people who did like Cold War seemed to me to be people, at a glance, seemed to be like diehard Doctor Who fans who, loved seeing the Ice Warriors, loved hearing a mention of the HADS, all of these things. But
well, yeah. It's interesting because I guess I had somewhere I had seen the design of the Ice Warrior costume, and I remember seeing it, and I guess at first it was like, wow, this is kind of retro. And I knew they were a classic monster, so I attributed it to that. But when it was in the episode, I was completely fine with it. Like when I saw it actually in action, despite having never seen the Ice Warriors before, I was completely fine with it.
I feel like that design wouldn't work as well on like a brightly lit Cardiff city street, lumbering down the street and people were running from it in fear or something. I don't think that design would look all that great in that context. But I think in this context of like the dimly lit submarine, which gave the whole episode, I thought, like this really great, creepy, scary feel to it.
Yeah, definitely.
I actually thought this was probably one of the scariest Doctor Who episodes in a while. Right.
Well, yeah, because, I think there's kind of like at least I had like kind of a mild sense of panic, like, oh my god, they're trapped down there. And, that sort of was with me kind of the whole way through. And, that sort of added to the suspense. I mean, obviously there's like a murderous alien trying to kill them all. But on top of that, even if they solved that problem, they were still at the bottom of the ocean. But yeah, so that was like an added layer, and I thought that made the episode very intense. And also, just jumping back to the Ice Warrior costume, I think that worked also because there were really no opportunities for like wide shots, which is basically what you were saying. That,
essentially.
You had to, like, a lot of them were like tight shots on parts of the armor and not like the whole thing all at once. And, I think that added to it and that sort of almost claustrophobic feel. I liked that. And I thought and it kind of made it seem more real.
I wasn't all that crazy about the Ice Warrior without the helmet on.
Oh, really?
It's not that I had a problem in particular with that design. It's just, it's kind of like, it's clearly TV budget CG alien.
Right.
And I had this feeling like the Ice Warriors have been around for, more than 4 decades now, and we've never seen them without their helmet. And after all this time, we're finally going to establish what's under there. and then I feel like that's it, kind of.
Right.
But overall, though, like throughout the rest of the episode, where we only see like the glowing eyes in the shadows,
right,
and those those really creepy finger claw thingies, that was just great. I love that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it seemed like the head was kind of. It seemed pretty, like, I mean, I knew it was TV budget, but it seemed almost kind of, well, I actually kind of liked the way it was animated. It seemed like it was very expressive, which, it seems like, I mean, I guess that's not that difficult, so.
What I did like, I liked the way the head was animated while the mask was being taken off, while the head was coming off.
Yeah.
It kind of gets stuck in there a little bit.
Right. It's like, you almost expect there to be like a sound effect, like a foom. Kind of thing, exactly. As it finally comes off. Yeah, no. Yeah, I thought that was that was like almost humorous. I thought that was fun. It kind of sucked all the menace out of him though, but it was, I don't know, I liked that. But yeah.
I don't know. I did think that reveal was a little bit of a letdown. It might have been better if they had shown a reverse angle. Where we could only see the back of the head or something like that, but I did overall. I really liked the portrayal of the Ice Warrior, both in terms of like writing and design and voice acting and all of that. I thought there's a little bit of quintessential rubbish 60s sci-fi to the whole Ice Warrior thing.
Yeah,
in my opinion, and I'm probably not the only person who thinks that. I think Stephen Moffat has said almost as much. But I feel like this was definitely an episode that got the most out of it.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that.
I feel like this wasn't a very character-driven episode.
No, not really.
I thought Matt Smith and Jenna Louise Coleman were good, but there wasn't a whole lot. There's not like a lot to say about their performance here.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it was a very demanding thing to like have to be filming while being constantly sprayed with water.
Right.
So I'm sure they worked very hard and deserve credit for that, but this wasn't like a huge triumphant performance for either of them.
Right, yeah, no. I do think I'm, like, I mean, not that I never really disliked Clara, but I do think that, like, I like her as a companion now, and she feels like a companion, I guess. I mean, of course, she feels like a companion, but, like, I've gotten used to seeing her now, and so I think, I don't know, I like her, and she seems interesting.
Yeah, and I think they sort of took this opportunity to go through the usual, how am I speaking Russian?
Right.
That kind of thing. But
yeah.
That also, I think, adds to the whole sense that we're seeing something we've seen before.
Yeah.
That every companion kind of has to question that and have that answered for them.
Right.
In a way that no one really cared in the classic series.
Right. Yeah, at this point, it would be strange if a companion just accepted it. And I mean, I guess Clara kind of accepted it in The Rings of Akaten, but, because I'm sure not everyone in that civilization was speaking English, but I'm guessing that it was just so alien that she didn't think to question it.
Right. She, you kind of get lost in thinking about other things.
Right.
And that doesn't occur to you. I still think my favorite version of that is the Donna one from the Fires of Pompeii. Where they do the joke about Welsh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was good.
But anyhow, this was good. One thing I've heard people say is that it reminded them of the movie Alien and the movie Hunt for Red October, neither of which I have seen.
Oh, so, yeah. I've seen both of those, and actually I have a note down here pretty much saying that. Although I likened it more to Predator, although I do see how Alien would fit as well. But yeah, no, I have seen both of those films, and I can say yes. No, I agree with that. I mean, it's a very easy comparison to make.
Yeah.
Which, so not terribly interesting. But yeah, no, that was definitely that. And I mean, you have to start wondering how many different movie plots you can actually insert aliens and the Doctor into, and then have an episode of Doctor Who.
Well, it's got to be a bunch, because that's kind of how they do things.
Right. But yeah, no, so that's nifty.
And I think that goes part and parcel with the whole, every episode is a big movie
right.
thing that they're still kind of clinging on to.
Yeah.
Turned out last week's episode just happened to be The Phantom Menace, whereas this week's episode happens to be The Hunt for Red October, or Alien, or Predator, or something. Yeah, anyhow.
Right. But yeah, no, why not? If I want, like, you know, I don't know how much I have to say about the episode, although there are, like, points I could nitpick, but...
Nitpick? Like what?
Oh, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's no satisfying answer to the questions that I have, so I really...
Okay.
I almost don't care. But, like, at the beginning of the episode, there was that one guy who, like, thawed out the Ice Warrior with the blowtorch.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't get why he was so intent on doing that.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't make very much sense. I think they just kind of got impatient.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I thought these guys were like naval officers in whatever the Russian equivalent is of the Navy, but I guess they have no discipline. Maybe that's why they lost the Cold War.
Presumably.
But yeah, no, it's just so weird. He just was like, well, you know, whatever, Dr. Whatever wants to wait until we get back to shore to thaw you out, but I don't want to wait. So I'm just going to do it now. And then he was punished for that hubris.
Yep.
But I don't know. And I mean, it doesn't really affect my enjoyment of the episode in any meaningful capacity. And there's no, I don't think there's any, I don't think there's any way to know his motivation. But I don't know. I just thought that was a weird way to start the episode, which, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's fine, but it's just weird.
Yeah, I guess.
So how did you feel about how the sonic screwdriver was used in this episode? Because you really disliked it last episode.
Well, this time I felt like it was less obnoxious than in last episode.
Right.
I mean, it's still there, and he uses it to, like, do things, but I felt like it was just over the top last episode. Now I'm back to being kind of meh about it, I guess.
Okay.
Like, I mean, it allows it in general. It's a fine thing. It allows the Doctor to just magically do things that would get in the way of the plot.
Right.
Why? Did you have a particular thought about it?
No, I just was watching this whole episode thinking about your gripes against it in the last episode. So every little thing that he did with it, I latched onto it and was like, does that make sense? I guess that's fine. And, you know, so the whole episode, the whole way through, I was just kind of saying, I guess that's fine. Also, is this the first time we've seen, like, the red settings?
I think it might be. I noticed that.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's what that was, basically.
I guess it would have to be.
I mean, well, because it was red.
And it was a setting.
Yeah. Because I guess, you know, that's one of the things which I don't intend to ever receive an explanation or anything for this, but I've always been thinking about how the sonic screwdriver that River has in the Silence in the Library two-parter, I've always been wondering about how the Doctor Screwdriver would go from that 10th Doctor design to the 11th Doctor design back down to that River song design.
Yeah, because the 10th Doctor sonic screwdriver was destroyed.
Right.
In the 11th hour.
Right.
I don't know. And that the one in Silence in the Library is clearly a modded 10th Doctor sonic screwdriver.
Right.
So, I don't know. That may be one of those things where it's kind of like how in the 5 Doctors, why is the first Doctor played by some guy who's not William Hartnell? Like, you have to kind of just shrug your shoulders and say, well, it is what it is.
Right. If I were to ever get an explanation for that, that would risk brushing into the territory of things that exist only to explain inconsistencies, which I don't really want to burden everyone else with receiving I'm assuming that the BBC would like do things specifically to explain to me how these things make sense. So I don't want to burden people with that.
That should be the job of the novels, basically.
Right.
I don't think they do that anymore because you know, in the 90s when novels were coming out, they used to explain inconsistencies like that because they were the novels were explicitly aimed at like adult Doctor Who nerds who were continuity experts, whereas the novels now are kind of aimed at kids who watch the show, basically. So there's less of a desire to do that. But if the pendulum ever swings back the other way, then there'll be plenty of novel fodder. Like another inconsistency that should probably be explained, or maybe not, is that the Ice Warriors here don't have hair, whereas the Ice Warriors in the classic series have hair poking out of their armor. They seem to have, like, long fur. Also, they have Lego hands.
Lego heads?
Hands. Lego hands.
Lego hands.
Like those clamps.
Well, that's interesting. Well, presumably, they've always had those kind of long, slender claws. Maybe their old model of suits just had those Lego clamps because they thought that would be more useful, but then they realized it's not. And so they should have, 3 fingers as opposed to, just clamps.
Well, I think it's backwards because this Ice Warrior is from 5,000 years ago. So this was pre-Lego clamp. This is the pre-Lego clamp, pre-hair Ice Warrior.
Oh, okay. So I did not know when the classic series story with the Ice Warriors took place. When was that set?
Those are in the future.
So maybe the Lego clamp is the better design, and basically.
Well, I mean, obviously the Lego clamp is the better design.
Oh, how foolish could I be? Yeah, no, I see it now. Well, one of the things I thought was weird was that even though the TARDIS's translation circuits were clearly working because they were speaking English, but it seemed like
they were speaking Russian.
Well, all right, but like everyone understood each other. Is what I'm saying.
This is true.
I'm pretty sure. At least insofar as language is concerned, there were references to karaoke that were not understood. Mm-hmm. Despite being
and Duran Duran.
Yes, right. But it seemed like there was text in the actual submarine that was not translated. It seemed like it was still in Russian, and I thought that was kind of weird and inconsistent.
Yeah, probably. I don't care though.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It seemed weird to me that there was. I mean, it could be that writing only works by proximity. But whereas speech will just work at no matter what distance.
Yeah, because the TARDIS is on the South Pole, so
right.
It does seem to be the case that like even when you're not near the TARDIS, you retain it for at least a little while. Probably goes bad eventually. Like it rots.
Goes stale.
Yeah, it goes stale. The translation goes stale, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like. That's fine. And speaking of the South Pole, I kind of wonder whether the next episode might just, take place while they're on their way back to the South Pole. Like, instead of actually it looks like it's going to be in a haunted house or something.
Right.
Could just be an 80s haunted house where they're just traveling through the 80s on their way back to the TARDIS.
Yeah, they're closer to the equator as they make their way towards the South Pole. Yeah,
I think it would be interesting if the entire rest of the season was just them trying to get back to the TARDIS instead of going places in the TARDIS.
That is interesting. And is there anything that directly contradicts that? Because I don't think there's any other historical stories that are taking place in this season.
I don't know. Well, the next one is Hyde, and then I think the one after that is Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. Is that right? So it could be that
they get back to it.
They get back to it, and then Journey to the center of it.
It's the only logical thing to do. Maybe the center of the TARDIS is where the the HADS
yes
are stored or controlled from, and so he's gonna tweak with that.
The HADS is
right
hostile action displacement system. It's an acronym.
Right, I forgot that. I misused plural whatever agreement.
Yeah, but anyhow, the thing about the HADS, by the way, is it was established in the classic series that it has to be set in advance. I think. So apparently, it's not going to be a recurring problem. You have to manually trigger it.
Oh, I see.
Every time.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, isn't that kind of true of everything? But yeah, all right. So it resets every time. That's probably good. It's probably good, although maybe not good, because what if it? Well, I guess it depends on how the TARDIS determines what's a safe place to go to. But
apparently only the South Pole.
Well, you don't get much safer than absolutely no one. Except for like maybe a few scientific teams, outpost or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know who was there in the 80s. But,
right. So that's pretty safe, I should think. It'd be really unfortunate if it were just some place that was just completely inaccessible.
Yeah, I mean, I also kind of question the need for it, given that the TARDIS is impenetrable, such that the assembled hordes of Genghis Khan couldn't couldn't get through the doors.
That's true. Well, and it certainly seems to be oversensitive. That might be the issue, though, is that because it's impenetrable, it just thinks that everything's a potential threat.
Yeah. That makes no sense, but sure.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't. You'd think that it would also... No, I don't know. It's constantly being bombarded with, like, air molecules, so you'd think it might be bothered by that.
Well, who wouldn't?
Going with what I said before about the additional problem of being stuck at the bottom of the ocean with an alien that's trying to kill you, but just being stuck there by itself being a significant hurdle, I thought it was kind of weird that both problems were kind of resolved all at once. I don't know. It seemed a little sudden to me. I don't really mind the way it was resolved. I just think it was a little sudden that, the submarine gets pulled to the surface by Skaldak's Ice Warrior pals.
Yeah, well, they just, did them a favor to thank them for finding a 5,000-year-old feared warrior who has now gone back to his people and will continue to wreak havoc across the cosmos.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose so. It's fine. It was kind of just a minor thing that sort of didn't really sit completely well with me on my first viewing, but I grew to accept it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting though that like the Doctor is always trying to appeal to people's reason, appeal to their better nature, and it virtually never works. But this time it seemed to work out pretty okay.
It worked well enough to get Skaldak to hesitate just long enough that they all get rescued and it stops mattering.
Yeah, exactly. If they hadn't gotten rescued, it probably wouldn't have worked.
Right. He would have probably changed his mind again and just pushed the button. Which I have to wonder if that even would have worked. Because, I mean, I don't have a supremely great knowledge of Soviet-era nuclear submarines, but I don't know if those missiles are meant to be fired from deep under the ocean. I'm just not sure.
I don't know.
But, I mean, it wasn't really that much of an issue because it was a problem to them, and that was real enough for me. Because I assume that they have better knowledge of their submarine than I do.
I should certainly hope so. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, even if it weren't designed to do that way, it could possibly be problematic.
Right. Yeah, even if it didn't work perfectly, it still might have been upsetting.
Gemma Redgrave, who played Kate Stewart in The Power of Three, is coming back as Kate Stewart. So that's fine. I liked her. I liked the actress, but I thought the character was kind of didn't do much in the episode, and
right.
Yeah, just sort of seemed to be there to explain to the Doctor how puzzled everyone else is. And then at the end of the episode, tell the Doctor that he's the most extraordinary man who has ever existed. And that was pretty much the entirety of her role.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. Well, yeah, and I we've discussed The Power of Three quite a bit, but I think that her role probably could have been bigger had it been a two-parter and things like that. I would be hesitant to say that she's like a bad character just because of that one appearance. And I don't know, that kind of is exciting. I like to think that in this in the 50th we will see more of her and we'll see more of her character. And I think that would be cool.
Well, you haven't seen very much of the Pertwee era, have you?
No, I haven't.
The Pertwee era is very much defined by the ongoing presence of various recurring unit personnel. Especially the Brigadier, her father.
Yes.
And the thing that was great about the Brigadier is that he kind of stood off to the side of all the madness that was going on. And his role was to sort of wryly comment on it and then intervene to either oppose or assist the Doctor as the needs of the plot dictated. So he was just like this incredibly useful, functional character who was also just funny and interesting anyway.
I see.
I feel like she doesn't quite live up to that yet.
I got ya.
The thing is, back in the 70s, Unit was very much, these characters who we kept seeing. Whereas in the new series, even though Unit has featured quite a few times, there's been almost no continuity of like who the people are. With the one exception that Captain Magumbo, who appears in Turn Left, also appears in Planet of the Dead, and I think that's the only recurring unit character of the new series. So it's cool that they're making some kind of effort to build up recurring characters, which they've also done with with Strax and Jenny and Vastra.
Yeah.
So I like having a sort of group of characters who might just turn up at any random point.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I am all for that.
That's all there is about the anniversary.
There you go. That is.
Even though I think filming is still ongoing.
Yeah.
All of the, not all of, I mean, several of the doctors were in, I think, New Zealand.
Yeah.
At a convention over the past week or two. So that would presumably mean that they were not filming.
Probably not.
Unless they were filming in New Zealand.
Going for a kind of Lord of the Rings vibe.
Yeah, they'll be, the 10th Doctor and the 11th Doctor are in, a Welsh quarry or something, fighting Zygons. But meanwhile, all the classic Doctors who are aged are hanging out in New Zealand in the Shire.
Exactly. And why not?